A regular day at Nagai Robotics. You greet Eri, and she goes flying off in the distance. You try to talk to her again, but then she just slides around, not even looking in the direction she's going. You can't stop walking in place. And now there's multiple Eris? What the hell is going on with this cutscene system? I don't know, but I'm so glad I'm done with it. Welcome back to another devlog for my indie game, Synthetic Girlfriend. Synthetic Girlfriend is a story-driven puzzle video game where you romance cute robotic girls, and the choices you make and the puzzles you solve affect the outcome of the story. Since this is the type of game that relies heavily on a well laid out narrative, I thought I should work on something that could help easily present the story events to the player. As you can guess from the title, a highly customizable 2D cutscene system is what I'm looking for. As always, full disclaimer, I'm taking heavy inspiration from Game Dev Experiments' tutorial on how to make a Pokemon game in Unity. He's the one that came up with this system. I just tweaked it a bit and repurposed it to fit my game. Link is in the description. Okay, so I started with the custom editor UI, so I could easily add actions to the cutscenes via these nice buttons in the inspector. The way these cutscenes work is that you add these actions to the list and then the system will play them in order one after the other. So you can do something like move this character over here, then make it say this line of dialogue and then move it over there afterwards. The first of these two cutscene actions were the dialogue action and the move actor action. Basic enough, but you can really build a lot with these two alone. The dialogue action was no issue to implement. It just takes a dialogue script and then it plays it. The move actor action, however, that's a bit more complicated, and you'll see why later on the video. Before I kept working on the new features though, I had to take care of a previous prototype cutscene system that I had built. This is what I used for those cool camera shots at the start of the Nagai Robotics building devlog. I'll put a link in the corner. So it was time to refactor some code and turn that prototype into a move camera action class for the new cutscene system. Next, I added the ability to trigger these cutscenes by checking when the player walked into an invisible trigger wall. What's a trigger wall, you ask? Well, in Unity you can have collision triggers, which essentially are non-solid areas that can detect whenever an object moves into them, stays inside of them, or moves out of them. Using this, I could make it so when Yuri goes through this door and walks into the trigger area, the cutscene will start. Here I used this placeholder greetings dialogue between Yuri and Eri. Once I got it done, I decided to actually write some dialogue where Eri warns Yuri that he can't go past a certain point and should get back to work. I thought it was fitting. It was working well enough, even if Yuri just keeps walking in place while the dialogue is being displayed. I'll deal with that later. After that, I moved into coding a simple move actor action for testing purposes. And would you look at that, I quickly ran into another bug. It turns out, whenever the player stands in front of an NPC and you press the key to advance dialogue, the NPC dialogue overrides the dialogue from the cutscene. Not only that, but if the cutscene ended with an NPC moving action, it works just fine, but if the cutscene ended with a dialogue action, then you would get soft-locked with no way of resuming normal gameplay. I thought adding states to the NPCs could solve the bug where the NPC dialogue was overriding the cutscene dialogue. Well, this made the system more robust and solved that first bug. It didn't solve the soft lock. So I decided to play my ultimate card. I went to sleep. And as luck will have it, the next day I woke up and the solution just came to me. Take it from my cat. Whenever you're facing issues in life, just go to sleep. I'm using a bit of a different dialogue system compared to what the Pokemon in Unity tutorial uses, so here is when I have to tweak things if I want them to work with my game. Without getting too technical, in the Pokemon tutorial the game state never drops out of the dialogue state, since it's trapped in an execution loop until the dialogue is done being displayed. This wasn't the case with my system, so I had to quote-unquote loopify my dialogue code execution, and after refactoring some code, I got it working. With this, I've solved the biggest bug in the cutscene system so far, and I could move forward. I'm starting to notice a pattern in my career as a game developer. Whenever I try to code a new feature, I always end up running into a bunch of issues. This is expected as games are hard to make for a reason after all, but then I will always spend all day trying to solve the bugs and trying to get things to work only to go to bed and wake up the next day having come up with the solution during my sleep. Have you guys gone through something similar in your projects? Let me know in the comments. I think it's a pretty interesting feature of the human brain after all. Anyway, now that I picked up my momentum back again, it was time to start adding more cutscene actions. I know I coded in that crappy move actor function for the NPCs to test things out, but now I wanted to move the player around too. However, since the NPCs didn't have those move around functions in common with the player, I had to unify both of them by creating a base character 2D class. Right, so remember the whole thing I did with the moving NPCs on the previous devlog? Well, I'm suspecting that given the way I have things set up right now, I'll probably have to trash most of that code. Spoiler, I did end up trashing 99% of that code. I've been trying to avoid this sort of big code refactoring, but oh well. What can I do? It really is the best way to handle 2D character movement. I spent a whole day getting the game to the state it was before. Thankfully, it was a pretty smooth road overall. Once I got the NPCs working again, I tried to make Mika move forward a bit whenever you interacted with her, and it worked. Now it's time to really get started with these movement functions. I wanted to have several movement types. One of them was the move const function, which served to move the player in an uninterrupted way, just like the 2D Zelda games or Undertale. Then I would like to have a move by function where I would pass a list of vectors and then the NPC would move by that amount sequentially. And finally, I would like to have a move to function where I would also pass a list of vectors, but the NPC will move to that position until it reaches it. I already had the move to function, so I made the move by function by modifying it a bit. And at first glance you would think that it may be a bit overkill, having this many functions just to move an NPC around, right? Well, when I was testing the cutscene system before all this code refactoring, I realized just how difficult it was to create a simple cutscene. I would have to move area around where I wanted her, then I would have to write her position down, go back to the cutscene object, input the coordinates on it, and there will always be some fine-tuning and feeling around, and it was just such a pain. And hey, I'll take anything that improves my workflow, which is a nice way of saying anything that takes away the pain and suffering I'm starting to feel from developing this cutscene system for this long. So, as I was coding these movement functions, I tried to make it so the cutscene action will call one function or the other based on a boolean called absolute position, which I thought was an intuitive name. I quickly realized relative was a bit more intuitive for the variable name. Plus, it catered to my nostalgia since it reminded me of my game maker days. And I forgot to make it a negative condition now. There we go. Here I am testing the added functionality and it works as intended. Yeah, Yuri facing through the floor is intended since that's the vector I pass in. Oops. Now I'll put the real intended values in the cutscene action and now we're talking. What's cool about this is that Yuri will always be where he needs to be for the cutscene to play out properly. Even if you enter the building from a bit to the right or from a bit to the left, Yuri will end up in the same place whenever he's done moving. After this, I kept following Game Dev's experiments tutorial and added a bunch of extra cutscene actions, like making characters turn to face a direction and the ability to teleport objects around. I also added some fade in and fade out actions. These are particularly useful to transition between cutscene and gameplay or to keep a good pace in between cutscenes. Not to mention, it also helps me hide things such as teleporting objects in and out of view too. Okay, I think this is it. I think this cutscene system is pretty robust now, isn't it? Well, time to take a break. I'm just gonna watch this really interesting video on the animation of Final Fantasy V and wait, this old game has pauses in between actions and could change sprites in its cutscenes? Oh shit, here we go again. So now I want to implement a pause action. I'm just gonna give it a pause time float variable so I can control the, well, pause time and hold the coroutine for the chosen amount of seconds and the variable states. Easy enough. And finally the set sprite action. We need a sprite, an actor, and some code to change the sprite. We also need to specify how much time we want to hold the quote-unquote animation. I say animation on quotes because it's just a single sprite for now. I tried messing around to see if I could play animations, but I couldn't get it to work. And since I didn't want to go down this rabbit hole yet, I decided to blatantly ignore this quirk. So I made some extra sprites for Yuri and decided that single frame quote-unquote animations would do. For now. Okay, so now I could add pauses and sprite animations. That's it, right? Well, so far all the cutscenes were triggered by an invisible trigger wall. And that's great and all, but what if I wanted to have a cutscene that for story reasons I wanted the player to interact with a specific object to activate the cutscene? Synthetic Girlfriend has its roots in the visual novel genre. In the proof of concept demo, everything happened through text boxes and the story and scenes played out in order. But I wanted to give the player more freedom than that. The way the demo was done and the very first scene in the very first chapter, the player didn't have any control over Yuri or what was happening on screen for several long minutes even, and I figured that wasn't really that fun. I should let the player move around and explore a bit before dropping more cutscenes and story points onto them. I guess what I'm saying is that I should give the player more options. Hence the need for cutscenes to also be able to be triggered from interacting with objects or NPCs in the environment. So I modified the interactable object script to accommodate for this, and after writing some more code, it worked. Okay, now that I'm done with this, what's next? Well, I was running out of time. I'm getting kinda burned out by this whole cutscene system thing. So while I could probably add more features and things to the system, I thought it was wise to give it a break. For now. I mean, I already had this pretty good system in place. I bet I can make a lot with it right now. Can I? Well, I don't know. So far I only made simple cutscenes for testing purposes, and I hadn't actually converged all the work I put into the system into a single fully realized cutscene. So I figured it was time to put the system to the test. Let's cut to unscripted dems. Okay, so after all that work, I'm now gonna show you the finished cutscene. If the game looks a bit different, it's because I'm recording this after having reworked the Nagai Robotics map a bit, and I also changed a bit the user interface, more on that later. So yeah, you just walk through this door and the cutscene starts, and we had a little fade in and fade out right there, and you can see how Yuri moved onto the center of the of this lobby area, and that's the move to function. I specified a position and you move over there. So this is what I was talking about when I was saying that no matter where you enter from into the building, Yuri will always end up in the place he's supposed to be for the cutscene to play properly. So, well, Yuri says, "Hope I'm not late." Let's see. He walks around, he walks a bit forward, seems I made it just in time, and then he looks around for a bit using those turn actions, which are pretty neat, very expressive for just being, you know, turning the character around. This place is oddly quiet. Was my first day really today? Oh, there's a receptionist, I should ask her. He's gonna walk towards the receptionist using the move by function. Hello, I'm new here and I was wondering... Huh? Hello? No response. She's perfectly still. Is she sleeping? Hello? Nope, nothing. I've been here for no more than 5 minutes and this place already feels extremely creepy. And there you go, you have the single frame animation where he thinks for a bit. What should I do? And we're gonna go with the fun option, which is touch her. Maybe this isn't the best idea, but I think I'll at least get a reaction from her. And you know, there's a bit of a pause. I'm also using the slow text, which I discussed on previous devlogs. Nothing. The feel of her skin stays on my finger for a couple of moments. Her skin felt odd. To be honest, I'm pretty confused and kinda terrified right now. This place is quiet as a graveyard and the only person inside is perfectly still. I think I should get out of here. Huh? And there you go, we have Eri over there. So she wasn't always there. She just spawned, or rather she became active. Her object became active and she walked from out the screen into the screen. So it's a girl, also using the move by function. Gray skin girl, a robot girl, and the android girl, which is Eri. Well, Yuri doesn't know her yet, so the new is here, and she can talk. I hear another voice, and there's also a red-haired girl, which you can probably guess who's this red-haired girl. What? He's already here? Oh man, I thought he would arrive in later. And then she walks off screen and becomes an inactive object again. And this red-haired girl, I think her face looks a bit familiar. And then Mika walks into the screen. Sorry for the wait. I didn't think you would hear this early. So she walked, downwards and then to the left, and she was facing to the left, but then I used the turn action to turn her, to make her look down towards Yuri. So I didn't think you would hear this early, and that's basically the cutscene. So yeah, and that's it for real now. So what do you think? Can you think of any other features that I could add to the system? Please let me know in the comments below. I'll try to code them in and maybe showcase them in a future video. Speaking of future videos, if you have watched my Devlog 6.5 video, you'll remember that I'm working on the calendar system right now. And that's coming along pretty nicely. So unless something extremely bad happens, that video is probably going to come out in December too. Please look forward to it. Also, I know this video should have been out by November, but I got really sick and I couldn't manage the time or muster up the energy to actually finish it in time. But let's look at it this way. In December you get 2 videos. What a steal, huh? With that being said, I think this is it for this video. So until next time, adios. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I want to thank everyone who's been patient and supportive during the break I took from developing the game. It really helped me recharge and regain my footing. Now that my mind is rested, I can start working on the romantic route of Dana, the protagonist's AI teacher that's super hot, and I want to... Wait a second. Who put that in the script?